when I say stretch marks, here's what I'm talking about is there are moments, there are times and there are moments or marks in your life that you must stretch yourself if you're going to grow. And you have to. There are moments or marks. I mean, you can just put them down. It's like here, God stretched me. And because he stretched me, I grew in this area. I didn't want to because the stretching feels uncomfortable. But there's moments in your life that he stretches you that you can grow. And those moments, those are the moments that you either respond and God expands you, or you fail to respond and nothing happens. The stretch marks. Defining moments in your faith. I can look back and there are defining moments. There's moments that I didn't do what I felt I was supposed to do and I feel like I missed. Come on, is that you too? Don't look at me like that. Like, oh man, no. There's also moments that I did and I can look back and like, I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't take that moment serious and let God stretch me, even though it was uncomfortable. Even though it was hard, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for those moments. That's what I'm talking about in stretch marks. All right, so you can look at it all different now. But in Mark chapter 3, says this, he entered the synagogue again. And a man was there who had a withered hand. So they watched him closely whether he would heal him on the Sabbath so that they might accuse him. And he said to the man who had the withered hand, step forward. Then he said to them, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill? But they kept silent. And when he had looked around at them with anger, being grieved by the hardness of their hearts, he said to the man, stretch out your hand. And he stretched it out, and his hand was restored as whole as the other. And I want to preach to you just that little bit, that line, he stretched it out. The stretching moment. He stretched it out. He stretched it out. You can be seated this morning. He stretched it out. And when I see the story, I don't know if you get embarrassed easy. Do y'all? Do y'all get embarrassed? I mean, would you raise your hand or would that be too embarrassing? Is that kind of wrong to ask if you get embarrassed easy just to... Because when you get embarrassed easy, you don't like attention drawn. And I kind of feel for this man because as the story's being written, as Mark's writing it out, you have all the eyes of the synagogue on two people. Jesus, who's up there speaking, he's in the synagogue and he's speaking, and everybody's looking and they're focused on two people. They're focused on Jesus and they're focused on the man with a withered hand. All eyes are on just those two people in the room. They're looking at the man, they're looking at Jesus. They're looking at the man, they're looking at Jesus. Because here's the thing, why they're looking at him is because he has a problem and Jesus is a healer. And they're looking to see, will Jesus heal? It kind of sets up the stage for a miracle to happen at this moment, doesn't it? If you have a problem and you have somebody who can heal the problem, who can take care of the problem, it sets up the stage for the miracle. So if you came in with a need this morning, you are in good company because the stage is set for a miracle in your life because Jesus is in the room. Everybody was expecting Jesus to heal. They were expecting him to do something about it because there was a need that needed to be met. This man walks in and Jesus could meet the need. So all the expectation was that Jesus would meet this need. But for the man, it had to feel a little different because here's this man with this withered hand, and everybody's staring at him because he has a problem. He already felt different. He already felt like he probably didn't belong. And now everybody's staring at him, focused on him, wondering what would happen. And I feel for the man because when you have something wrong in your life, the last thing you want is attention drawn to it. Come on. The last thing you want is for everybody to look at you. I think that's why it's so hard to come to church the first couple of times, because you feel like all eyes will be on you. So you try, and I watch people as they come in and they kind of will sit alone. They'll sit quiet. They're trying to kind of hide because they don't want the attention drawn. In fact, I can just picture the man. He has this withered hand. And if he's like a lot of us, he tries to probably hide the fact he has a withered hand. In other words, he doesn't want everybody to see his problem. We come in with the problem, and he's wanting everybody to not notice. He's hurting. He's not wanting everybody to notice his issue, just like you don't want everybody to notice your problems and your issues, so he hides the fact he even has a withered hand. And he's probably got pretty good at going with just his good hand, deflecting a little bit. Got his hand in his pocket. That's my bad hand. Don't want to draw attention to it. I hide it. Don't want everybody to see it. Hiding the fact of what is wrong with me. And deflect, focus on what is right with me instead. And he's probably got pretty good at hiding the withered hand and just using the good and focusing on the good and draw attention to the good. I can relate a little bit because I had a friend. I still have him. He's still a friend. Facebook now because life. Everybody have those friends. I mean, they were good friends, and now they're Facebook friends. You never really talk to them, but you sneak in and see what's going on in their life some. And I had a good friend I grew up with, pastor's kid too, and we'd get together at all of our pastor's kid summits. I probably didn't realize they had those. We called them camps or camp meetings, Bible conferences, conventions, whatever. I mean, we had, the parents got together, so us kids got together, and I knew him for so many years. He was just amazing at any instrument. I mean, the guy he could play drums, good. He could play guitar. I mean, he could tear up a guitar. Amazing at it. He could play the piano or keyboard. He won talent competitions on that. He was so good. He could do like Jerry Lee Lewis, Great Balls of Fire. He'd imitate how Jimmy Swaggart would play, dun 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 da 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 da. I mean, he was so good. He just had Y'all know who that is on the was amazing at he could pick up everything. I knew him for years until someone finally pointed out, I can't believe he can do all that. Look at his left hand. It was crippled a little bit. It was smaller than the other. So then I would watch, and as he would play, he would, on the keyboard or anything, this left hand was just one finger going. Everything, I was amazed because, look, he was so good at his good hand, I didn't even notice his bad hand. I say that because this is what we do in our life. Our faults, our failures, we hide those back so much and just show people our good side, our good stuff. Here's what I can do, and it's just everything of this, so that we deflect, that you don't see the bad, the faults, the failures that I fail here. I'm not good at this, so I deflect and I'm there. Let me give you an example. How many remember, like Robin Williams, how shocked you were when he committed suicide because of his depression? Because everything with Robin Williams that you knew is he was so happy and he was joyful and he would just make everybody laugh. But on the inside, he was so depressed and so shooken and so broken. And what he did was, because of his brokenness, he would deflect, and you never saw that side. It was just the good. It's like in our lives, we do the same thing. So I can picture this man that he has this withered hand. Now he's not to the point that he's handicapped. He's not like all the others that are out begging because he can't accomplish anything. He doesn't want to draw the attention, so he's working. He works hard. He does everything. He's not a beggar on the street, and he comes in because he's gotten so good with his good hand. You don't even notice the withered hand, because he's hiding it. But all eyes are on him because even though he hides it well, everybody knew he had a withered hand. It might have got whispers going. Everybody knew. You see, that's the thing we deal with that's the hardest, isn't it? That no matter how hard we try and hide, people know anyway. As hard as you try, as hard as you deflect, as hard as you just focus on your good and what you can do and what you're good at and everybody knows the faults, the failures. And this man, as he comes to the synagogue, Jesus is speaking. The crowds are there. Everybody wants to hear Jesus speak. He's just like them. But all eyes are on him instead, and all eyes are on Jesus. And I feel for the man with the withered hand. And then to make it worse, Jesus calls him out. It's bad enough everybody's looking at you anyway. But then Jesus says, hey, why don't you come step forward? Really? I would rather not. I would like to just stay in my little area, my little corner. I'm just still just. So he comes, and this is how I picture, if they had pockets back then, surely somebody invented pockets in Middle East times, and back then at that point, surely somebody had a pocket. That man, you needed a pocket. Comes in with his, like this, steps forward with his hand in his pocket, his bad hand. Don't draw attention to me, Jesus, I really don't. This is uncomfortable. It's like when I call somebody up for an example, when I'm preaching, I never get anybody that comes up excited about it. Do I, Britt? They're embarrassed every time when I call them up and name them out. Isn't that right, Casey? I mean, they don't like it. But he steps forward, hiding it. And Jesus is using this now, and this is where it gets hard. This is where it gets difficult, because all eyes are on him, looking at him, and he calls the man forward. He calls him forward because he's looking at the hearts of the religious leaders, and he's looking at their hypocrisy, and he's staring at the heart of them who are wondering, ready to make an accusation. Will he heal? And we can get him for healing on the Sabbath because that's like a work or a job. And Jesus needs an example. He needs an illustrated sermon. So he calls the man out who has the problem, who has the issue that everybody's looking at anyway. And he's going to use him as an illustration to work on the hearts of the religious leaders. Calls him forward, and he begins to say to the crowd, is it good to do good on the Sabbath or bad? You know what? How is it wrong to do good on the Sabbath? Is that really what you're upset about? And he's looking at their hearts, and he's getting even more mad. He's getting even more angry because their hearts are just hardened and they're not changing. And he calls out the man. He says, look, I need you as my illustration. And that's what he does. He does this. He uses us in our lives. He uses our shortcomings. He uses our failures. He uses our messed up lives that we try and hide from everybody else. And he calls us out and he says, I need to use you as an illustration of redemption. I need to use your messed up life as an illustrated sermon that I can preach to others about a restoration that can take place. I need to use your life, and I know it was messed up and you're trying to hide it and you don't want everybody to know about it, but can I just call you out and use you as an illustrated sermon of what deliverance looks like? Can I use you for my glory? And that's what he's doing with this man with this withered hand that everybody's looking at. He says, I want to change the hearts of these people, and I need to use you as an illustration. So come forward so that I can use you for the glory. Man, he does it all the time. I mean, think about it. Think about it. Whose life have you looked at? Whose life have you seen that God has changed? That now you see, man, I can see what God can do because of this life that was changed and because of that life that was changed. And that he does this. He uses people for his illustration of redemption. And he always uses the part we hide. We hide, God reveals for his glory. He takes the bad and uses it as a testimony. The thing we don't want anybody to know about, he uses it, he pulls it out for his glory. And he tells the man, he said, hey, stretch out your hand. And here's what I picture. You might picture something different, but here's what I picture when I read, because I can think of this man and trying to look at it from his side, that he doesn't want people to know that, and he's so good at using his good hand and drawing attention away from his bad hand that when God says, hey, stretch out your hand, that his first instinct is to, this is my good hand. His first instinct is to do what he knows he can do. Come on. Well, isn't that your instinct when God asks you to do something? You go to, oh, I can do this. I'm good at this, God. I can do this. Let me do this instead. I know you're probably talking about this side, but I'm bad at this side. I can do this, so let me do this. And I can just picture him as he begins to pull out his good hand and try and stretch out his good hand. And Jesus is going, no, the other hand, stretch out that one. And he's thinking, but I've never been able to do this. I'm not good at this. This one, this is my struggle hand. This is the side I try and hide. And God's telling him, stretch it out. And his first instinct is, no. And then it's... And here's the order that Mark writes this. He says that he stretched out his hand, and his hand was restored, made whole. That he stretched out his hand, and his hand was restored and made whole. That's the order of it that Mark writes it, which makes me believe that his hand was still messed up until he began to stretch it. Because I would rather it read, his hand was restored and made whole, and then he stretched it out. Come on, right? Right. That's what I want in my life, that I want to look down and see, hey, my hand's pretty good. Look at that. It's healed. Yeah, let me stretch it. But I don't think it was in that order. It seems like how Mark is writing it, that it is as he begins to stretch, his hand becomes whole. As he stretches, he's asking a stretching of his faith. He's asking him to do something that he cannot do, and believe that if he does what he can't do, that God will do what he can do. And that as he stretches, that his hand will be made whole. And I'm telling you, there are things in your life that God has been calling you to do, that he's been putting within you, and you're looking at yourself and saying, I can't do that. I can't do that. I wish I could. I don't have that ability. I can't do that. But I'm telling you, as you begin to stretch yourself, as you begin to stretch it out, as you begin to do your part, God does his part. And it doesn't happen the other way around. It's not this other way. It's not that God does this, so then I can do. No. It's as I do this, he does this. Stretch out your hand. I don't like that part. When God tells me to do that, come on. Let me put it on your level. When God tells you to do that, I'm just guessing you don't like it either. Because no one likes the attention drawn. No one likes to stretch. No one likes to be vulnerable. Because this is a vulnerable moment for a man who is being asked to show out a weakness of his. And as he reveals his weakness, God reveals his strength. I want it the other way around. I want God to stretch out his hand instead of me stretching out my hand. Let me give you an example, because in the Word of God, I love it when God stretches out his hand. And when he stretches out his hand, it's when miracles take place. It's when wonders happen. It's when God does the impossible, when he stretches out his hand. I want God to stretch out his hand. I want it to be like when Moses was when the children of Israel were in Egypt and they were slaves and they were bound. And Moses, God speaking to him on the backside of a mountain, reveals himself in this burning bush moment. God says something that I love, and that's what I want in my life. He says this in Exodus chapter 3, it was verse 20, that says that so God speaking to Moses in this burning bush moment, he says, so I will stretch out my hand. I like that. I like that. I want God to stretch out his hand. I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders, which I will do in its midst. And after that, he will let you go. Speaking of Pharaoh, but God says, here's what I'll do, Moses. I'll stretch out my hand. I want that. How many wants God to stretch out his hand? That's the promise that I'm looking for. That's what I always think. That's what I want. God, I need you to do this. I need you to do the miracle. I need you to stretch. Later when Moses is with Aaron and they're getting ready to go to Pharaoh, they're a little nervous. Some time's passed. It's the 7th chapter now. But God reaffirms in this 5th verse. He says this, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I, God speaking, I stretch out my hand on Egypt and bring out the children of Israel from among them. How awesome. It's like God telling Moses again, look, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something great. I'm going to do something marvelous. I'm going to stretch out my hand. So now when they're there, Moses and Aaron, they're in front of Pharaoh. They're telling him what God has spoken to them. And now it's time, because Pharaoh won't listen, it's time for the first plague when all the water in Egypt will be turned to blood. Here is what God says now to Moses, and it's a little different than what I'm expecting it. He says this, then the Lord spoke to Moses, say to Aaron, take your rod and stretch out your hand. Wait, now wait. I thought, God, you were going to stretch out your hand. Why do I have to stretch out my hand? Do you know how crazy I'll look? Stretching out my hand over waters, proclaiming something I can't do. You're supposed to stretch out your hand. How crazy will I look when I stretch out my hand? Now you're asking me to stretch. I don't want to stretch. I just wanted you to stretch. God, I just wanted you to do something great. I just wanted you. And I'm vulnerable here as I stretch out my hand. Can I do this in private? Can I do this with no one looking? Can I just pray or speak kind of a quiet prayer and it's all on you? But you're wanting me to stretch out my hand over the waters. And if I do that, the waters will turn to blood. I don't know about that. I just wanted you to stretch out your hand, God. And he's asking Aaron to stretch out his instead. You know, God was setting something here. He's setting a principle. I want you to catch this. This is the whole point of it. I want you to catch this. 6 out of the 10 plagues that fell over Egypt, God told Moses or Aaron, one, to stretch out their hand. And then the plagues hit. He's setting up this principle that if you stretch out your hand, I'll stretch out my hand. If you do what you can't do, I'll do what I can do and make up the difference. If you stretch your hand, I'll stretch my hand. So now it's established so well. Shelby, will you come up? It's becoming established so well that now whenever God has let the children of Israel go, they've ran, but now they've come to a point that they can't cross. They're at the Red Sea. The Egyptian army is behind them. They're coming after them, and they're panicked, and they don't know what to do. And Moses is crying out to God like, I don't know what to do. You've brought me here and I'm stuck. I'm trapped. I can't cross the waters. The army's bearing down on me. They're going to kill us. God, I don't know what to do. And he's panicked, and the children of Israel's panicked. And all of this is happening. And God, in his sweet voice, look at what he says to Moses in this time of panic. He says to him, the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? You ever feel like God does that to you? Why are you crying? Why are you crying to me? Do you not know what I established with you so far? Why are you crying to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward. Well, there's a Red Sea. We can't. Fill out the connection card. Was that popped up there? Was that? So then it says, no, go back. You're right. Go. Just, there we go. Lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. And the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. Here's what I feel is that we've been crying to God so much. God, why don't you do this in my life? God, why don't you do this? And he's saying, why don't you do? Well, I can't, but if you stretch, I'll stretch. If you do what you can't do, I'll do what you can't do. If you do something that is not in your comfort zone, if you will stretch, I'll stretch. What are things that you have been asking God to do, but you're unwilling to act upon yourself? This is an act of faith moment. A stretching moment. If I, then he. If I, then he. I want the hand of God to stretch out so much. Here's my problem. I don't want to stretch mine. But if I don't stretch mine, he doesn't stretch his. I've got to have the faith so much to just be willing to stretch, believing that as I stretch, he stretches. Not my good, but my withered, my messed up, if all I ever do is stretch out my good side, my good stuff, I don't need him. I can do that. He's blessed me with that. But when I stretch in areas that are difficult, that are hard, that God, it will not happen without you, but I believe you enough that I'll go ahead and stretch. As I stretch, he stretches. I want you to stand with me this morning. Let me ask you, where's he trying to stretch you? Where is he trying to stretch you where you feel vulnerable? You would just rather just hide and keep this set apart, and God, let me just focus here instead. But God, I need you in this area of my life. And he's saying, well, then stretch. Stretch it out. Stretch and out. Stretch. When if you'll stretch, he'll stretch. I want you to bow your heads with me. I want our prayer team, we're going to do something different. A little bit different. It's a stretch. We'll stretch this. I want our prayer team to go to the side. Just off to the sides. It can be the sides. If you need prayer for something as we go into a time of worship, you can go to them. But I want our altars open. That if you just want God, you just want to dig into this a little deeper, you can come to the front and let God just speak to you. If you need prayer for something, you can go there. But I want to get you out of your comfort zone this morning. And for some of you, getting out of your seat is such a stretch. I don't want to do it. I don't like doing it. I feel comfortable right here. I don't want attention drawn. But if you stretch, he'll stretch. Father God, I don't know what all they're facing, what all they need you to do a miracle in their life about, God. But God, I know this, that you are more than ready, you are more than able to stretch out your hand over them. And God, restore, deliver, set free. Do the miraculous, God. When they do something that they can't, cover them and fill in the gap. Do the impossible. When they stretch, God, you stretch. When they step out on an act of faith and stretch, God, you stretch over their situation. God, do it. As we just worship, I'm going to ask you to do something. What's the Holy Spirit speaking to you? And we're just going to spend a little time in worship. And if you need prayer for something and you want the prayer partners, the prayer team to pray, they're there. You come and let them pray with you. If you just want a little closer time with God, you're saying, I'm willing to stretch out. I'm willing to get out of my comfort, and I just want to come. This altar area is open in the front. You can come and just kneel. You can pray. But let's stretch this morning. Well, will you come?
I trust